It is always an exciting day in Money with Katie Land when it is time to look at a new wealth planner. So I threw on a blazer for the occasion. I busted out the ring light, like we are doing it big. And this tutorial can kind of be thought of in two parts. So the first part is like the setup phase, that's going to be the bulk of it. And then I'm going to show you in the updating phase kind of how you maintain a wealth planner, how you can continue to use it over time, and what you're going to do every single month. So to start with, the setup phase. A couple high level things right off the bat. These important notes, these are very important. One big thing that we saw last year is that if people added, deleted rows or columns or cells or like merged things, it would mess up on the back end some of the formulas that are being referenced in the cells that you can see. So all of the hidden sheets that contain a lot of the formulas that are being referenced, if you delete something on the front end and the reference goes away, then you might see a ref error somewhere else. So avoid adding, deleting, or moving the rows and columns. And then copying and pasting data is fine, but you just want to be careful about cutting and pasting data because, again, that can end up deleting formulas and then you're going to see ref errors. So the other thing that you'll notice this year is these little learn more lime green sections below certain features. So like, hey, do you have a rental property income? Click here and it's going to give you a more specific guide if you're investing in rental properties. You know, this is a deep dive on your tax liability and how you fill out that section. So it has some information about what users outside the US should do. It has some, FAQ questions. If you're already living off investment income, you don't have earnings anymore. And then it goes into more detail for each and every single cell that you have to fill out. So depending on like the extent of or the complexity of a feature, you're going to probably see more of those landing pages throughout this version. Or if there's just something like, hey, if you're curious how these numbers are being calculated, you can click on the tab and it's going to tell you exactly how we're thinking about the feature. You'll also see in some cases where these little black like ear markers are, or in the Excel version, they're red, but it'll tell you in a note like, hey, here's examples of what this could be. Or especially this is helpful in areas where there's like a lot of jargon or where it might not be like immediately obvious what something is for or what it means. We try to add in notes throughout. So take a look at the notes as you go throughout. Check out the landing pages if you get stuck on something or if you're curious how something works. But I went ahead and started to kind of preliminarily fill out this planner. So the first thing that you're going to do when you open yours is you're going to add names for your sources of income. So I have 3 here. I have tutorial income, tester income, and then one more source of income because I am a grinder, obviously. Then you're going to go over to your estimated U.S. income tax liability section. You're going to choose your tax status from the dropdown. This year we added married filing separately and head of household by popular demand. So you're going to pick which one applies to you, and then you're going to put in an estimate for your gross annual income. So this is basically all the income that you earn with the exception of dividends. So if you're like, ooh, I'm a dividend investor, I know I'm going to make, X $1,000 in dividends. That's the only thing that I would love for you to exclude here, because qualified dividends and capital gains, actually, for that matter, are taxed differently. I just want you to think about this like income from work, or if you are getting income from like other sources, right? You can put it all here. Okay, the next little section is just, are there any portions of that income that are either non-taxable, like you're getting stipends, you have disability income, what have you, or self-employment income? So in this example, I said, okay, I earn $75K, 5,000 of that is non-taxable, and another 5,000 of that is self-employment. So if I were fully self-employed, and maybe I have $0 of non-taxable income, but I have $75,000 of self-employment income, that's how I would fill that out. Then this section is for paycheck investments. I'm going to go ahead and reverse that just so it doesn't get too crazy. These are for basically things that come out of your paycheck. So last year we just had room for pre-tax investments to get taken out because we wanted you to see how it impacted your tax liability. This year, we want you to put in everything. So whether you have pre-tax paycheck investments, Roth paycheck investments, and then other deductions. So like pre-tax deductions that you're making for health insurance premiums or other post-tax deductions if like you're paying for a long-term disability policy through your employer and it's like $20 a month or whatever. Basically, you want to put in anything that's getting taken out of your income, whether it affects your tax liability or not, but that would affect the amount that you are actually taking home. Like union dues, that's another one that would be post-tax deduction. But we do break it out by investments and deductions because obviously this is money you are saving for the future that stays with you. And this is really no different than just like an expense. So in this example, I went ahead and I did $5,000 of pre-check. Pre-check is a great thing. We went ahead and did $5,000 of pre-tax paycheck investments, $2,500 of post-tax or Roth investments, and then $500 of pre-tax deductions and $100 of post-tax deductions. And then you're basically just going to get to see like how that affects your tax liability, how it shakes out. So in this example, this person has $64,500 of estimated reported taxable income after they take into account their non-taxable income and their their pre-tax paycheck deductions. And then after the standard deduction for single people, which is $15,000 in 2025, basically they're going to get taxed on $49K, give or take. So their federal tax liability is $5,800. Their marginal tax bracket is 22%, but their effective tax bracket is only 7%, which is super cool. And then you see the payroll tax liability, like the FICA taxes that are going to come out of their paycheck. Then you'll also see like this is probably the additional tax you're going to owe on that $5,000 of self-employment income. And then the last thing is state and or local tax. Now, obviously there are a bazillion zip codes all over the US that have different state and local tax combinations. So what we recommend you do if you don't know your rates already is to click the link that is just linked in that cell, type in your income, your filing status, and your zip code, and it'll tell you what your effective state and local tax rates are. You can just add them together, put them in there, and it will apply the correct, like it'll remove the state and local taxes for you as well. So in this example, this person now can look over here at their estimated monthly breakdown and they can see, okay, so my gross monthly income is $6,250. My total tax liability is about $1,000. I make about $5,200 a month in post-tax income. But because I'm already having $675 taken out every month, both for, 401k or like my healthcare premiums, whatever, my take-home pay is $45.86. So that number is being used here in your example goal monthly breakdown, where this is something I'm really excited about this year. You can actually pick what your goal savings rate is. So like, I think we're going to set it to a default of like 25%, but maybe this person's like, hey, I want to save 15% this year. And would you look at that? That means my total goal savings based on my post-tax income of $5,261 a month is $789. Well, the good news is that we already know, because we've put in our pre-tax and post-tax paycheck deductions, our investments, we know that we're already going to be saving and investing $625 a month before we even get our income. So what it's going to give you is your breakdown here is basically, all right, cool. You want a 15% post-tax savings rate. This is what like the scaffolding of that budget should look like. This is how much you have to save of your take-home pay to hit that amount, inclusive of your paycheck deductions, which is about $164. And then it's going to give you like a general guide for, hey, okay, that means goal housing, goal transportation, goal living expenses, and goal discretionary spending should be around these amounts. So in this example, it's like $1,700 for housing, no more than $600 for transportation. That's usually going to be a little bit high. Like most people will probably spend more on housing and less on transport. And then this is just trying to say, okay, living expenses, things you have to buy, gas, groceries, etc. You want to try to keep it under that number, but then like this is about as much as you'd probably feel comfortable spending on just like whatever you want type money. So as you adjust this, like if they wanted to save 30%, it would say, okay, that's $1,500 a month of your post-tax income. 625 is already taken care of, but now you're saving 953 of your take-home pay. And then as you can see, it's adjusting the other numbers proportionally. So I'm going to go back up. I'll say like around 20% is probably where we should aim. And then you are going to pick your year and month that you want to start in. So I'm going to do Jan 2025 as mine. And then you can already kind of start to see, this is filled out because I already kind of started filling out the budget below, but you can see how your income tax breaks down, your net income, federal, payroll, self-employment. You can see your saving and investing breakdown again, because I kind of cheated and I started filling this out ahead of time. But in this example, once you get down to plan your monthly spending, I went ahead and filled this out ahead of time so you could kind of see like how it all comes together. But basically what we wanted to do, you're like, why does it say harmonica? That was my example category. So originally this said family, and that's like the default category that's there, but I wanted to show you that you can adjust these as you wish. So for example, in your housing category, you are going to pick from the predetermined drop-down subcategories. We do this to kind of help people like jog their memory of like, oh yeah, I do have to pay for that. So we try to make it pretty extensive, but if you have like a bouncy castle in your backyard and you have like a bouncy castle guy, and that's like a category that you need, if you just hit the pencil icon, this little side panel will open. And then I'm gonna move myself so you can see the bottom. This little side panel will open. You'll just click add another item, and then you can put bouncy castle guy, done. It's going to ask you if you want to apply just this instance or all. You're going to click apply to all so that it updates it everywhere. Oops, there I go. Okay, close that out. So now when you click into your drop down again, you have an option for bouncy castle guy. And, want to make sure he's getting his due. But anyway, so with some of these categories, they're probably going to be things that you're buying every single month, and they're going to be the exact same amount every single month. Rent or mortgage is kind of like the quintessential example of that. It is very predictable and it's always the same amount. So if that's the case, you're going to click this button for recurring fixed bill. And that is going to make it so that every month has that $12.50 in this example already populated as like an expense that you're not having to put it in every single time. Whereas if you don't check recurring fixed bill, it'll populate the goal amount of $100, but it's not going to put in $100 as though it's already been spent. So you'll go through, you have housing, food, family, travel, transportation, pets, medical, donations, debt, personal care, entertainment, and miscellaneous. I feel like these are pretty good categories for, 85-90% of people, but in my example, I was like, all right, let's say that we're like a competitive harmonica player. And so we want to change that family category to harmonica. Okay, so we have harmonica maintenance, we have harmonica classes. You get the point. You can update the subcategories as you wish and update the main category headings, and it will transfer through the rest of the planner. So no worries there. In Excel, you just write over the names the same way that I did for this category, like main category name. That's how you change the subcategories in Excel too. But in Google Sheets, you have to use that little edit button, the little pencil. Okay, so you're going to get totals for each category. You can see how much you're spending on each thing. You can go back and go, okay, I'm spending $16.55 on housing. Is that more or less in line with the goal? Yeah, it's like pretty in line with the goal. Cool. So that should be able to help you see if something is like way out of whack, at least at the big kind of main category level. Okay, so now what's going to happen is you are going to see your summarized things here. So I have example, student loan payment of $125 a month. It's always the same. You'll put your debt here. You can actually just write in debt. There's not a drop down for you. but it's going to summarize expected monthly spending. So in this case, $4,185, and then it's going to annualize it for you. So it's about $50,000 in this example. Then you're going to see your goal monthly debt payments totaled up, your expected monthly savings, which basically just means like money that's going to be left over. So in this case, we know our goal based on our goal save rate up here was 427. So it's just reminding you of that. Like, hey, if you want to do 20% post-tax savings, like you should save 427. But we can see here that we don't actually have enough money left over to do that. So a couple things. You can either say, all right, you know what, I'm going to lower my save rate, go for 15. Or, so then we'd be somewhere between 15 and 20. Or you could say, actually, it's like really important to me that I hit 20. So let me go revisit some of my discretionary spending categories and see where I can trim the fat and say like, hey, I'd actually rather spend less on some things so that I can make this happen. And then you've got this box, which is basically, it's dynamic. You can see it's negative here, which is a little confusing because I already started populating some of these goals. I'm going to exit them out so you can see how it changes. But basically what this does is it's looking at the money that you've already said you're going to save in your paycheck contributions, and it's adding it to the money that you're expected to have left over. And basically what we want you to do with this is use it as a guide as you set your savings and investing goals below. So I've already added in some example categories. So I have my checking and savings, my investments, my debt, and my real estate. So these are my example savings checking accounts. I have, high yield savings, a checking account, whatever. You can open this up. You'll see your options in the drop down. Same deal. If you want to edit it, add a new one, go ahead, put that in there in that little side panel. But then you're going to just name it. I usually put like I'm married and we manage our money together. So I'll put the person who owns the account and then the type of, or rather the institution. So like Katie's Chase, and then you'll see how the names get aggregated later. Then this part's interesting. This is new this year. You're going to select a timeline or like a purpose of the account. So if it's an emergency fund, you're going to pick emergency fund. You've got regular bill pay as an option. So like most checking accounts are probably going to be regular bill pay. You've got a taxes like paying soon designation. You've got sinking fund spending soon. You've got short term within 2 years, a medium term. So if it's a 529 plan, for example, and you're going to use it for college down the road, you'd click medium term college. Or if it's a house savings fund. This is the only one, this long-term financial independence, this is the only one that is going to, on the back end, tell the planner, hey, this account and any money in it and any money that gets added to it should be counted toward financial independence. So anything else, anything that you're like, hey, it's a 529, yeah, I'm saving in it every month, yeah, it has a lot of money in it, but like it should not impact my FI timeline because it's not for that. This is our way of kind of taking all of that stuff that should not be accounted for the long term and like mentally setting it aside. So you'll notice that typically on this side of the board, the checking and savings, you're probably not going to be picking long-term financial independence because money that's just sitting in cash isn't typically going to be allocated for the long term. It's not the appropriate risk profile. Whereas on the investment side of things, where you're going to see like your 401k, we have lots of options to help you, but if you want to add your own, you always can. 403b, 457b, 401a, solo 401k, TSP, simple IRA, SEP IRA, brokerage account, HSA, 529, profit sharing, pension. You get the point. You can pick what you want, add in your institution or, whatever name. I just added in a couple examples here to show you. But then for the most part on this investment side, you're probably going to be picking long-term financial independence. So once you choose that and pick your tax status of like, is this money pre-tax, tax deferred? Is it Roth, taxable, or tax-free? And enter your starting balance, you'll tell the planner, am I still actively contributing to this account or not? Like on a monthly basis this year, do I intend to keep, manually or automatically adding money to this account? So in this case with my 401k, saying, yes, I am actively contributing to that. Not only am I actively contributing, but I'm putting in, $625 a month. So I'm going to go ahead put in my monthly contribution goal of $625, and you'll notice that this is going to adjust. So the intent is that you can kind of watch this number and it'll give you like a running total of how much you still need to allocate. So for example, with this emergency fund, maybe I'm still building it up. I have $10K in it already, but I want to be adding money every month. So I'm going to put in $100 a month. Great. I have this sinking fund that I want to be putting money in, so maybe I'll do $50 there. And then I also have this IRA, this Roth IRA that has 5K in it that I still want to be adding money to. And I know I have about 126 left, so maybe I'm going to do a $125 contribution. So kind of the intent is like, we want to give every dollar a job. We want to get as close as we can to an accurate estimate of our take-home pay and an accurate estimate of like what money that we're not taking home is getting saved somewhere else. And then of the money that's left over, we want to make sure that we know where it's going and that we're planning to save it or invest it. So like I mentioned, you shouldn't delete rows, but if you have a lot of space and you want to hide them, you can totally do that. So I'm just going to make that smaller here so you can see everything at once. Then you have your debt section and your real estate section. So both of these sections are not being used for the budget purposes where you're putting in like what you're maybe you're spending something on a mortgage up there, or you're making debt payments here that you want accounted for in your monthly spending. Down here is more for powering the other features in the planner. So for example, I put in a couple just so you could kind of see how it works. Like an auto loan that has a 3% interest rate, you owe $20K and your payment is $500 a month. From here until it's paid off is going to be about 3.5 more years. And in that time, you're going to spend $1,098 in interest. So if you had student loan, consumer loan, you can see how the interest rates are higher on these. If you were like, oh, okay, well, my payment is only $50 on this debt, but that's going to take me 15 years to pay off, and I'm going to pay $4,200 in interest. What happens if I go $150? Oh, okay, that's like way better. That's much better. That's only $700 in interest in 3 years. So you might go, okay, cool. Oops. You might go, great. I'm going to go up to my budget and actually increase that payment and plan around paying more toward that debt. So this is a nice little calculator that you can use and kind of allow it to help you strategize what actual payments you want to set as your goal, what you want to commit to. Similarly, in the real estate portion, you're going to put in anything that you own. So like maybe we have a primary residence and it's a 3% interest rate because we're God's favorite. The value of the house is $350K. Maybe we owe $200 more. And our payment is $1,250 a month. I have no idea if that's accurate. I am truly just spitballing. But the goal then is that whatever you put in here, it is calculating on the back end how much time it's going to take you to pay that off. And it's factoring it into the financial independence calculation. So when that $1,250 monthly mortgage payment falls off your budget, it is going to remove it from your expenses. And it's going to adjust that in the back end and change your FI timeline. Okay, last thing here is you just have your kind of summaries. So we're going to save $150 a month. We're going to invest $750 a month. And then annually, that's about $10,800. So that pretty much concludes the setup portion of the planner. That's the main stuff you need to know. Again, you should have these little helper notes. I guess the only thing that I would add is if you're someone that likes to plan on a monthly basis for like biannual or annual expenses, there is a little helper guide for how you can do that right here. Want help planning for large annual or biannual expenses? If you click learn more, it'll kind of walk you through how you plan for the expense using the sinking fund feature in the setup phase. And then it'll tell you, okay, when you want to use the money when it's time as you're updating it later in the monthly tabs, that's how you would do it. So there are some more in-depth explanations for how to plan for something like that. But the TLDR is just that you would be setting up a savings account. Maybe this is like vacation fund, and you would be setting it as sinking fund, spending soon. Maybe the balance is $500. You're actively contributing. You're putting in $50 a month, like that sort of thing. But again, it's going to count it as savings, but it's not going to treat it like money that is being put away for the financial independence for the long term. Once you finish setting that up, you can go over to your net worth tab, and what you're going to see, I went ahead and hid some of these so it's not as long, but it'll look a lot longer when you first get on this tab. You can see how the first month is going to go ahead and populate for you because you already put in a lot of the starting balances. And you can see, okay, my current net worth is $218K. Here are all my assets. Here are all my liabilities. Again, based on the debt that you entered, the mortgages that you entered here in the liabilities section of this table. And then up here, you kind of get a nice little snapshot. So you have your checking and savings, any cash, you have your investments overall, pre-tax funds, Roth, taxable, equity and real estate, and then total debt. So it's just kind of like aggregating everything for you, but then you can see a finer picture down below. And so now we're kind of shifting into the like updating phase. Every month, whether you want to do it on the first of the month or the last of the month is up to you. I usually do it, I guess, it kind of switches back and forth, honestly. I'm not like super religious about it, but after every 30 days, basically, you're going to come in and you're going to just check the balances and go, okay, savings account balance now is $9,800. This balance is the same. It's still $15,000. You're going to go in and you're going to enter the new balances, and that's how you're going to track your net worth over time. So like I said, doesn't really matter if you do it at the end of the month, the beginning of the month. What's more important is that it's pretty much just like generally every 30 days and that you're just being consistent so you can see that picture of how it's changing. Ideally, the asset side is going up, the liability side is going down. This is the area where we've made the biggest changes this year. If you're a past user, you're probably like, whoa, that's a lot of inputs, but we really wanted to make this page way more robust. So my goal here is to kind of take you through how this works. That way you understand how all the different inputs work, kind of how to like interpret the information it's spitting back out at you, and how to really get the most out of it. But if you get confused at any point and you don't want to watch the video again, just know that there's always this tab, this little landing page link that you can click on that it will take you through like what is financial independence, what is it based on, like what assumptions are we making, and then another more in-depth explanation of like how each input works. And then we also have, if you are a past user and you get radically different numbers this year, we also have this linked over here above the timeline, which is essentially like, why does my data look different? How has the back end calculation changed? And why is it maybe showing me something that looks really different than it did last year? The TLDR is that it's more accurate this year. We're taking in a lot more information. We're trying to be more specific about the money that we are counting toward FI and making sure that it is absolutely intended for that purpose and not like skewed to hell by a $500,000 529 account. But basically the way that you should interpret this information, there's like three main sections to this sheet. There's the top bar, which is your snapshot, which is how long till your FI, your projected FI year, your safe withdrawal amount, gross, pre-tax safe withdrawal amount this year. So currently what you could live, or like what your investments can produce safely, and then your projected FI number. So like by the time you're FI, this is the number that you are probably going to have if all these assumptions play out as planned, which obviously we don't have a crystal ball, so we're doing the best we can here. The other sections are your input table, which I might even zoom out just a little bit so you can kind of get a higher level view of everything. But this is your input table on the left where you're going to have the opportunity to enter your data and tweak it. And then this is kind of just like all of the raw data, honestly, how your gross annual income, net income, annual expenses, total long-term contributions, and then total invested balance grow over time, and how your gross annual safe withdrawal rate changes over time. So basically what it's doing on the back end is it's taking all these inputs into consideration, and then it's looking at this column and it's going, when is the first time that their gross annual safe withdrawal rate eclipses their annual expenses? And that's what it's returning as, like in this example, that happens 18 years from now. So to zoom back in and kind of talk you through how this works. Your inputs, some of this is going to happen automatically for you. your current long-term invested assets. So again, remember that is only assets that you have marked as being for the long term. So if a lot of your savings are like in a house fund that are not for long-term financial independence, they're not going to be included here. So your current invested assets, your current income, your current spending, and then your effective tax rate. Then you have the opportunity, because this is kind of a funky thing that's like it doesn't really impact your savings rate, but it does impact how this plays out, is your employer matching. So if your employer matches money in your 401k and you know, hey, I'm putting in $625 a month, but like my employer's adding $300, you're going to add that here in this matching section, and it's going to take it into account for how your investments will grow with that included. In this event, I just put in $300 as an example. Then you have temporary major monthly expenses. So you have room for two. And in each case, you have the expense itself, and then you have the year it starts and the year it ends. So if you're already paying for it, but you know when it's going to stop, and it's like a reliably large amount of money that's definitely going to come out of your budget and then get added to your savings in the future once you don't have to pay for it anymore, you're going to put it here. And you're going to put in 2025, the end year, and the amount. So what's going to happen is after that end year, so in this case, let's actually go 2030 so I can see it a little bit better. In 2030, we would expect our expenses to, or I guess 2031 if it's going through 2030, expenses to drop, which they did. They're increasing for inflation, but they're also dropping because this expense is coming out. And we want to account for the fact that now that's like $12,000 a year, give or take, that like we aren't having to spend anymore. So that should get added to our long-term contributions. However, if it's something that's going to happen in the future, like you're not spending $500 a month now on this thing, but you know from 2027 till 2035, you're going to be, or maybe 2034. You're going to be spending money on this thing. You're going to go ahead and put it in, and it's going to, where's 2027? Here we go. It's going to increase your annual expenses by that amount, and it's going to decrease your long-term contributions by that amount. It's going to assume that that money is no longer being saved and that instead it's being spent on this temporary expense. So you have two spaces for that. If you want to name them, you can just write over, name it here and put that in. But the intent is that if you have, really we developed this feature with parents in mind who like may have really high expenses right now, but then they know their kids will go to public school or, what have you. And they want to at least account for some of it falling off later. That's what this is for. Then obviously we have to make some future assumptions about like how things are going to play out. So we have average income increase. We set it to 3%. We set our average rate of return to 9, and then we set our average inflation to 3, which means you're looking at real returns of about 6%. This is kind of like the averages again, but if you want to make yours more conservative or more aggressive, you can. Like if you want to assume that your spending is going to go up faster or that your income is going to increase slower, just know that those differences projected out over time and compounded over time are going to pretty radically change your results. So I always kind of skew on the side of being conservative. I will sometimes say like, I don't want to assume my income's going to go up at all. Or like, hey, I'm working really hard right now. I want to work less in the future. So I'm going to make that negative so the income side actually goes down, what have you. Okay. Then you have your future net income from other sources. So if you have a pension or Social Security, we have room for 2 pensions and 2 Social Securities. The Social Securities are cost of living adjusted by definition because that's how the program works. You'll just pick what year you want it to start. And then the pensions, you can check a box if it's cost of living adjusted. And again, you'll choose a start year. And then basically what you'll see happen. So let's say I have a $500 a month pension, and I think it's going to start in 2041. So now you're going to see your net income rise. Okay. Then this is the section for debt. So this is going to be checked automatically. If you want us to lower your expenses automatically when debt gets paid off, keep that box checked. So if you recall, You have these theoretically should match, right? So student loan, say I'm paying $800 a month. Let me just make that match. Again, since I'm just making these numbers up, they don't match, but in your real life, they should. But so you can see here, this is the data that it's going to be using to determine what debt you're paying and when those debts are going to be paid off. So in 3.5 years, this payment's going to fall off your expenses. In 14 years, this payment's going to fall off. In 3, this one's going to fall off. Or I believe we round up. We assume you pay it through the end of the year. So I think in these cases, it would be 4 years. So it's, again, a little conservative by design. And then same with the mortgage payment, that's going to fall off. Okay. And then the last thing you can do, I guess the couple last things, if you are planning on using a large portion, like so you're chugging along, right? Like you've got 1.6 million bucks, maybe you're at like 1.4. And then you get this amazing opportunity to buy this house and you're like, ooh, should I take 200K out of my investments in this particular year in the future? How would that adjust the FI timeline? So let's see. 2043 is when we're going to hit FI. We got 619 here. Let's say like once we hit $1 million in 2039, we want to spend 250 on something. So if I'm going to take 250K out of my investments in 2039, I want to see how that's going to impact my FI. And as you can see, doing so set back my FI by 2 years. So that can be useful if you're trying to run scenarios of like, if I buy a house, what will happen? Or like maybe sometimes, honestly, you do this and you're like so close that it really doesn't adjust, it like doesn't impact it at all. But taken together, all of these different factors will start to adjust the timeline in different ways. So you have room to do that twice. And then you also have room to add an inheritance. So if you know that money is coming, or maybe you're getting like a trust distribution, I don't know, rich people things. You're getting money that's coming in a lump sum. You can go ahead and put that in there, year of receipt, the year that you expect to get it, and that will also show you how things change. And then, yeah, you just make an assumption about FI. So if you want your 4% safe withdrawal rate, that's great. If you're a little more conservative and you want to go for like 3.75, now that's okay. It's going to take us 1 more year. You can see that that just increased. And then this is cool. So this is just, you want to be careful. If you want to see what's going to happen when you stop working. So like in this example, if you look at this person over 40 years, this is assuming that like they're FI in 2046, which is about right here. But basically that like they just keep grinding, you know, they just keep working. If you want to know what would happen if you were to stop working and for your income from a job, you know, not income from these sources, these will stick around, but your income from a job stops. And not only are you not adding long-term contributions anymore, but now you are withdrawing money, you're withdrawing your expenses from that amount, that, you know, investment, the $1.8 million, I guess in this case. What you can do is you can pick what year you plan to stop working. The only thing is you need to make sure you pick a year after you are already FI. If I were to choose like, I'm going to quit in 2036, everything is going to error out because you're not FI. So you basically like are going to use up all your assets and it's not going to work. But if I say, okay, no prob, I am going to stop working in 2048, not 9, I meant to click 8, whatever, it doesn't matter. So that's going to zero out my income at the end of 2049. It's going to assume that I work through 2049. So I guess it's just the year before. You know what I mean? There we go. So if 2048 is the last year I work, then it's going to zero out my income except for that, you know, 6K a year that I'm taking pension income or whatever it ends up being. And then you can see how this changes. So you can kind of watch what happens with, okay, I have 80K of annual expenses. I have 6,000 in post-tax income from a pension. And then I have a 93K safe withdrawal rate. So I'm really only taking out 80K a year and then 83K and then 87K. Like this is the amount that my investments need to support. This is the amount they could support. And then what you'll see is that in most cases, I guess depending on what assumptions you're making about returns and inflation, what have you, this number is going to keep growing. You're going to still continue to have a really solid investment return, again, assuming 9% per year, which like obviously we know we're not going to get that. It's going to be all over the place, but in average is important. Whereas like if I were to delete this and to keep working, you can see how much bigger it gets. So if you want to model out your drawdown and like how that's going to work, you can do that here. You can play with your assumptions. And then the last thing on this tab is just your real estate investments. So if you have real estate income, rental property income, again, I recommend checking out this how to account for rental property income throughout the planner, because there are places where in some cases it's better to use net income, in some places it's better to use gross income. But in any case, you can put in your total net income now, how much you think it's going to go up each year, and then whether or not you want it to be applied to this calculation. So if for some reason in the future you want to see what would happen if there was a serious change to that net income, whether it be a big increase or maybe like selling a property and the net income going away, you can do, a big change insertion here. But the debt itself, or like the expenses side of it, of your mortgage falling off, will happen automatically when that happens. So that's kind of the big bulk of it. Now, really on the updating side, you're just going to be going in every single month and you're going to be picking, hold on. This is from an old version. You're going to be picking from the drop down for income and putting in your income. Okay, my tutorial income, $2,500, right? You're going to go ahead and put in all your take home pay. And then you're just going to fill out how you actually spent. So the things that you said were recurring will automatically populate for you in blue. And then anything you're writing in, you're going to put in the white cells. If you need to write over a blue cell, you can. It's no big deal. It's just kind of like to help you and give you the baseline. But if something ends up being more or less, you can totally change it and it's no big deal. Then you can see how much you spent. And then down here, this is where you're going to manage saving, investing, irregular expenses. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we can see everything. But we basically wanted to make our savings rate calculations more accurate this year. So we have two different sections for savings. We have our paycheck contributions, so things that are coming out of the paycheck before you get take-home pay. And then we have other contributions. So you're going to click through. The 401k is obviously coming out of the paycheck. I don't think anything else in this drop down is. Let me go do this so I have another one. Okay, like a TSP. Okay, let's pretend we're actively contributing to that too. Go to my monthly tab. All right, so I'll go, okay, I made my 401k contribution. It was $625. That's done. I got a $300 match. Cool. I can see my associated timeline, like what it's for. And then, cool, I also made my $50 contribution to my TSP and I didn't get a match. So anything that's coming out of paychecks will go there. And then other contributions that you're just making with take-home pay will go below. So you go ahead. Again, I've been playing around in this one, so it's just a little bit wonky. Cool, but like you can see now, my vacation savings, my goal is $50 a month, so I can be like, yep, it's my sinking fund, $50, cool. This we already covered. And then, okay, like a Roth IRA, perfect, long term, got it. Okay. So that's how you'll enter your saving and investing contributions each month. And as you enter your spending and you enter your savings, it's going to start to populate total spent, total saved, your overall save rate for the month, your total long-term savings, and then your long-term save rate. So in this case, like our overall save rate was nearly 30%, 25% was long-term. Got your nice little pie chart here, and then it'll start to calculate averages. So at the top, you have at a glance, like, okay, my assets are this, my liabilities are this. This is my year-to-date spending. This is my year-to-date income. This is my year-to-date save rate. And this is my percentage to financial independence. So it's going to tell you an update, like as you get closer, your progress to FI and your long-term, like financial independence savings rate. Okay, the last thing that I'll highlight on this tab is your irregular expenses. So this is an area where you can put things that you didn't budget for, or maybe you did budget for, but you're using a sinking fund. So like, let's say we take that vacation. So we buy, flights to Japan, and I'm going to say that was $1,500. Savings used, we are going to go into, what is our sinking fund called? It's our Betterment High Yield Savings is our sinking fund for vacation. Or no, wait, vacation savings. I couldn't remember what I named it. So we'll click vacation savings. And then since I'm using savings that I've already set aside, I don't want this to come out of my monthly income. I don't want it to treat it as though I'm spending income that I just took in. So I'm going to click exclude from budget. And that's going to allow me to kind of keep my regular spending and my excluded spending or my sinking fund spending separate. Whereas maybe you have another irregular expense, replace tire, right? So you had to spend $250 on a replacement tire. That was just money that's going to come out of checking because it's, we didn't expect it, but here we are. We're not going to exclude it from budget. We want that to count toward our spending because we didn't prep for it, but it happened and here we are. So that's kind of how you can use the irregular expenses, both as an area to put in expenses that you don't want to apply to your budget, but also so that you can have a place to enter where you're actually using sinking funds that you might be contributing to in a previous month. Then again, you've got some averages, you'll have that chart populate, and basically you'll just every month come back and fill it out. So here's January, February, March, April, May, so on and so forth. And you will, by the end of the year, have a lovely amount of data to look through. And you'll get this high level in your year in review tab, your total contributions to savings, your total asset growth, which looks negative right now because I in April, it says I have no money. So that's another thing to keep in mind is just that if you set an end month for April, but back in the net worth tab in April, there's nothing there, it's going to go, where'd all your money go? It's gone. Total debt payoff, total spent, again, because we have zero liabilities in April in the net worth tab. Total spent, total income, overall save rate, net worth, and then your progress to financial independence. It's going to generate this chart for you to show how your income and savings differed from one another. It's going to tell you your average monthly income, your total income, same for spent, irregular expenses, total saved and invested, total net worth growth, which when you actually have the whole thing filled out is really cool because you'll see I put in 15K, but my net worth grew by 30 because of other growth, which is kind of fun. Total debt payments, and then total excluded spending. So basically how much was I spending on a monthly basis that I was not counting toward my budget? What percentage of my spending is irregular? You'll also be able to see all your income aggregated. So all your sources of income, how much you made from each. And then you get this nice big view, I'm going to zoom out, of your spending plan, where you can see where it's going to automatically show you okay, you were a little over here, or oh, actually you're in the green, you were really under budget for this thing. So as you go to make future budgets, you'll know, hey, I need to allocate more for this or less for this, what have you. Down here, you're going to get to see your goal amounts for your various accounts that you set out at the beginning of the year. You'll see how much you contributed. You'll see your progress toward those accounts, and then the average amount you put in per month. So if you're, behind or on schedule or ahead of schedule, you'll see that, the timelines associated with those accounts, and then just some other nice little trends and insights. So, you know what this is almost making me want to do though, is make my end month January too. So this populates, yeah. So what you'll see in this trends and insights section is really interesting. It's going to show you where you're most over budget, where you're most under budget, your peak spending month, your largest spending category, and then your second largest category. So it'll kind of show you this pie chart of everything, including your irregular expenses. It's going to show you your top 5 saving and investing timeline, or by timeline tag. So if you have a long-term investment account, it's all your long-term investments will get aggregated here, your emergency fund, all your sinking funds. So you can kind of get a sense for of my total savings, this is how much went to the long-term versus sinking funds that I ended up spending in the short term. And then finally, you'll get to see your asset allocation. So percentage breakdown of like your net worth. So like this person's net worth is super real estate heavy, but you can kind of get that sense for like tax status, and if you are maybe a little underweight or overweight in certain assets, maybe you'll notice like, ooh, I have like way too much cash, etc. It'll tell you your total net worth growth, and then it's just going to give you an inflation adjusted amount. Again, this is just based on January. So if you had a full year of data, it would tell you, hey, based on what you spent this year, this is probably how much you're going to spend next year. It's just going to adjust it for what the inflation number or estimate you give it is. Okay, so that was a lot, but that is like the deep dive into the planner. So your setup guide, most of your time is going to be spent in this dashboard tab, getting everything right and tight. If you are an outside the US user, again, you're probably going to want to use Excel. We're going to have a separate little like how to adjust the tutorial for users outside the US video, so you can see how to do that in Excel. And then, yes, every month you're going to come back, you're going to update your net worth tab, you're going to update your monthly tabs, and then if you ever want to slice and dice your data, you can see like, okay, Q1 numbers, or I don't have any data in here, so it's going to yell at you if you try to do something in reverse. And maybe I want to do Q2. So 2025 Wealth Planner, get excited, I'm excited, and happy planning.